Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. Many of you will know today's guest, Nathan Outlaw, from his various TV appearances, Michelin Stars, all-round love of hospitality, and the author of 5 well-regarded books. Chatting to Nathan, you can see why he's such a popular hospitality human. Relaxed, positive, knowledgeable, with no pretentiousness, and happy to chat about the challenges, lows, and highs of his hospitality adventure. Nathan was generous with his time in this conversation, where we touch on just how tough an impact the pandemic had, with Nathan having to close his restaurants in London, but how it created a positive opportunity for him to reevaluate his business and his lifestyle. Nathan is now super excited to be 100% focused on his 2 restaurants in Port Isaac in Cornwall. And as you'll hear during this chat, he's really worked hard to simplify the business and reevaluate the importance of looking after the customer and keeping his chefs creative, with sustainability high on the agenda rather than just chasing Michelin stars. And with decades of experience behind him now, and a far greater understanding of the business element of restaurants compared to his early years, Nathan now gets to create a set menu at a set price for a set number of covers booked out 90 days in advance. It's an utterly genius model that really gives him and his team the freedom to enjoy simply creating incredible seasonal dishes that vary depending on what has been caught or farmed locally. A real tale of learning, closing restaurants, opening restaurants, and all the time loving the produce and the team around him. I really hope you enjoy this week's conversation. And as always, if you do, please subscribe, rate and review the podcast on your player of choice. And to keep up with my now slightly less regular episode releases, sign up to the newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk. And I'll send you a very brief email on the release of every new episode with any useful links that are discussed in the show. Cheers. Nathan Outlaw, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Hugely appreciated. Can I just ask, where in the world are you, Nathan? Are you at a restaurant? Are you at home?
I'm at home in Cornwall at the moment. Just getting ready for everything to go mad.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you're going to be. I think most of Britain's coming to see you this year. I think, isn't it? They can't go abroad, so Cornwall's going to be the hot destination, I'm told.
Yeah, well, according to all the papers and all the media, it seems like we're going to get hammered with lots and lots of people. But to be honest with you, it happens most years. So I think we're pretty well versed at it. And there's only so many people that can actually fit into Cornwall, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I reckon they'll try and squeeze a few more in this year. So, do you live in Port Isaac? I know the restaurants are in Port Isaac. Is that where you live as well? Or?
I live about 15 miles inland from Port Isaac. I think it'd be a bit full on to actually live in Port Isaac as well as having both the restaurants. So it's quite nice to just get away. But I've lived in Cornwall for over 20 years now. My wife's like Padstow born and bred, so I've sort of we've got a lot of friends and family around as well, which is good.
Amazing. I didn't know anyone lived inland. I thought everybody hugged the coast, but you can. There is an inland to Cornwall, is there? Is that just to avoid the crowds? Or?
Yeah, you get more for your money as well. It's pretty expensive living by the actual sea, as you can probably imagine. So it's quite nice. I mean, we're not far from the moors, from Bobbin Moors, and it's sort of like it's a bit wilder sometimes, but it's a lovely place to be. Just close enough, but not too close.
Amazing. No, it's a beautiful part of the world. I do love it down there. I'm not too far away down the coast, but it's a good spot. So look, I'm really excited to chat today. You've been on quite a lockdown journey. You've closed some restaurants. You've changed some concepts. I imagine a bit of a lifestyle change as well, because I know you were working quite regularly in Dubai and up in London before, and presumably you're now back to sort of Cornwall permanently. So can we start there, please? What restaurants did you have up and running pre-COVID, and what are you going to have coming out the other side? And has your day-to-day sort of life changed off the back of that? Are you basically in Port Isaac for the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of here now. I mean, ever since the first lockdown happened, the first thing that happened to us, we had to close the restaurant that we only opened for about 7 or 8 months in London, which is at the Siren at the Gorian, which is a real shame because we had a lot of the guys that were working with us there had come from when I had a restaurant at the Capitol Hotel in Knightsbridge as well. So that was very, very tough. Probably one of the toughest things I've ever done to actually get a room full of people and tell them, unfortunately, there's no restaurant anymore. And then I had to come back, most people, I'd come back down to Cornwall and I just thought I had to do the same thing. So that was, it was a pretty stressful time in all until the furlough was released. And then I think everyone breathed a little bit better after that. But now as I sit here, I mean, there's no Dubai, there's no London, there's nothing else, no associations with anybody else, just me, my wife, and my team with the two little restaurants in Port Isaac. And to be honest with you, it sounds, I don't like saying I feel good, but I do feel good about it because it's quite nice after running around like a nutter for probably the last 10 years. Thinking I'm doing what I wanted to be doing, but realising the lockdowns made me realise it isn't what I wanted to do. What I really love is just keeping life a bit more simple and then cooking good food with my friends and family around me, really.
Amazing. It's fascinating, I think, in how many people have been on that journey and just gone, you know what, I'm just going to go for something simple. And it'd be interesting to see how it lasts. So it must have been a real emotional roller coaster, presumably some real highs and lows. But fundamentally, do you feel exhausted now, or actually you just really excited and buzzing to get back open?
I'm sort of really excited about actually getting back to it because I've really missed being in the kitchen and really missed working with the team, and because I'm very lucky. The guys that have been with me, some of them have been with me. Well, Pete, my head chef's been with me for 20 years. We've been working together, so we are like family, and it's nice as well that when we changed the restaurant after the first lockdown, for people that don't know, listening, we closed our fine dining restaurant, which is a 2 Michelin Star restaurant. Everyone thought I was mental, but
Yeah, it's brave.
but I knew it wasn't right, and I knew that there wasn't longevity in it. And the actual lockdown gave me a bit of time to think and made me realise that actually what I wanted was just. I still wanted a nice restaurant. It's still never going to be cheap because we're dealing with the best ingredients. But what I didn't want to be doing is putting myself into a sort of a corner where we were doing this one type of paint by number, safe seafood cookery that delivered for everybody who came in and paid the big money. And it just didn't. There's not longevity in that. I mean, it might sound mad, and people might think, well, you were getting 140 odd quid for your menu, and you were doing, you didn't have to do as many people to make the restaurant work because of that. And the point is just the expectation was so high. I didn't realise it, but there was a lot of pressure on me to actually. Obviously, you got to perform, and you got to meet those expectations, and in doing that, it put a lot of pressure on everybody, So I've just thought, enough of this. It's not worth it. It really isn't. We've achieved everything we ever wanted to achieve, and we set out to achieve many years ago. Let's just enjoy ourselves now. Let's just have fun with it. Because one thing I think this whole sort of lockdowns taught everybody is that you can't count your chickens, and you've got to enjoy it while you can. So what I don't want to be doing anymore is going into a kitchen 14, 15, 16 hours a day, stressing out about whether Mr. and Mrs. Smith have got the right size piece of turbot or whatever. I just want to get the best ingredients, cook them in a nice way in a good environment with all the guys, and just have fun. So that was the big change, and that's why we changed restaurant Nathan Outlaw to Outlaw's New Road. The New Road bit is just it's actually on New Road in Port Isaac. So it wasn't like this is a new road we've got to go on. It's a new road. It was just very conveniently
that's really handy.
On New Road. So,
yeah, and the fact that you've got a cool surname like Outlaw's New Road just sounds cool, doesn't it? I feel like I'm in a Western movie or something. My surname's Cribb, and it would just sound a bit shit if I named my restaurant Cribb.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Crib, you know what Cribb is in Cornish, don't you? Cribb's like year 11s is. You get like between lunch and breakfast, you have Cribb.
Oh,
So there
really?
you go.
I didn't
Yeah,
know that. That's interesting. I know,
yeah,
you get MTV Cribs. That was always a
yeah,
bit cool. And
yeah,
there is a Cribbies or Cribs restaurant somewhere in Cornwall. I
yeah,
remember. I remember getting a photo outside once. I can't remember
yeah.
which town it's in. So
Well, some
okay,
people call it in Cornwall. They get it's like their lunchbox. There's a crib, your
really.
crib. Yeah.
Oh, so there's a chance then. I can open a crib.
You have a play on words with that in Bournemouth. There you go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Cornwall's coming to Bournemouth. So it is interesting, that decision to do that. When you say it didn't have longevity, because I suppose, the perception from the outdoor, I absolutely get the pressure bit. I think it's a little bit like places that focus on sort of high end weddings. You just think, God, I just couldn't cope with the stress of a sort
Yeah.
of, a bride every other day who's demanding the very best day of their life. But do you think when you talk about longevity, do you mean longevity for sort of you and your sanity, or actually do you think the business model of being a destination to Michelin starred restaurant, do you think that would have run out as well? And what do you mean by that?
I think both really. I think what running a 2 Michelin star restaurant and a 3 Michelin star, or any high end restaurant really, to be honest with you, not just because it's got Michelin, you've always got that pressure. You put yourself in. I think it naturally goes into an area where you start questioning, making decisions about things you're putting on the menu or the way you're serving people purely off of the basis of the actual sort of expectation from the customer. So you're not making the right judgment. So, for example, when I've got a fisherman comes to the back door, and he's got this beautiful fish, and he's only got like 4 of them. I'll be going in the old restaurant. We'll be going, well, we don't need. It's not enough. But just because you sort of feel like you've got to have enough for everybody, right? So now with the new restaurant, there's no rules, So we've basically, the creativity has gone, as basically the volume on the creativity has notched up to 10 max now, because we can just, anything goes. So in the old restaurant, it was sort of like you've got certain dishes that people were expecting because they've seen it, maybe they've heard about it or seen it on Instagram or whatever, and you sort of getting people coming in and almost like wanting the T-shirt, which is, I don't want a restaurant like that. I want a restaurant where it works for us as a restaurant, and for the staff, and for our suppliers and for our fishermen, so that they can give us anything, and then the creativity comes from me and the chefs to come up with something amazing. But we don't. If you've got them confinements of like those invisible rules that nobody actually knows about with Michelin and things like that, you sort of you start worrying about things that actually are not important and actually don't produce the best food, in my opinion. So yeah, that's really, from that point of view, and from a business point of view, the pressure is on now, because obviously we're charging half the price per head than we were before, but we feel that now a better dining experience with us is actually only to be with us for a couple of hours, not to be with us for 4 hours or whatever it was. It's actually come in, have a lovely lunch or a lovely dinner. If you want to stick around, come on the second sitting of each service, or for a lunch or dinner, because you can, obviously there's no limitation. But we get people in Cornwall, especially when they're travelling around, that just want to come in and go, as well, but still experience what we do. So it's actually, when we changed it, instantly it just felt so much better. It was almost like within the first week we were like. So usually when you make a decision, as you know, as a restaurateur as well, that you think for a while you're pondering it, and it might take months to sort of iron it out. This was within a week. We knew this was right, and I was so glad, because I was the one that sort of sat everybody down in a room, all the chefs and my wife and everybody, said, right, we're not doing this anymore. And you should have seen their faces. Obviously,
what was Pete's reaction when you told him?
Well, Pete's on board. Pete's always been on board with whatever idea. He was someone who sort of like, he's done the capital for me. He's done Dubai for me. He's done, when we were at St Endog Hotel in Rock, he did that. We've been together for a long time. He even worked with me at Black Pig, my first restaurant, back in 2003. So,
wow.
Pete, he sort of, we're basically together on any decision, really. We've got a good relationship. But the other guys were just, obviously they were like, but then, to be honest with you, within not one person even questioned it. They all got on board and they were enjoying. They saw the benefits straight away, because they were enjoying themselves and they were having more fun. So, and I think that's the thing in this industry, hospitality. We are. our own worst enemy sometimes as an industry, and we sort of never say no, do we? We always just make it happen. And so I think if you're going to have that, if we're going to continue to have that, let's please everybody and make it happen. Let's at least make it fun. So,
yeah, no, it's really good. I guess basically COVID provided you the excuse and opportunity. It sounded like it had been niggling away at you anyway, and this sort of fast tracked the decision, basically.
Yeah, no, I'd been. This is something that had been in. I've been thinking about for many years. Not really. It was obviously the COVID situation gave me time to think it out properly, and that sort of first lockdown gave me time to really consider all the actions and the ramifications from all the decisions and stuff financially. And I didn't have time to do that before, because I was just running around like a blue-ass fly, really. So actually now, it was a good time to do it, but it was definitely something that's been in my mind for a long time.
So as well as the food, which I understand, have you changed other things? Does it change the number of covers you can do, and the decor and the music and the vibe in general? Does it feel like a more relaxed kind of experience, I suppose?
Well, we gave the place had a good paint job and had some new furniture, so we didn't go mad. But we've the actual way the restaurant runs now. Obviously, we did do a choice when we first opened, and then realised quite quickly, because we've only got 5 tables upstairs and 3 tables downstairs at the moment due to the social distancing. So that sort of limited us. And what we found with having an a la carte is that we were producing an uncomfortable amount of waste from my point of view. And that was purely down to just what I'd accept as being fresh enough to be served the next day type thing. So it was sort of not because the menu was badly judged. It was just a natural thing. You've got so few customers because of your limitations of what you can do in the restaurant, that you're actually producing a menu and you'd have in waste. So I said, so within probably 3 or 4 months, I made a decision to go back to the set menu. And that basically allows us to be more ethical in the way that we are with a restaurant as well. So obviously sustainable and ethical sort of stance is quite strong with what we're trying to do as well. We don't like waste, we don't like plastic, we don't like all that sort of thing. So we basically didn't. It made sense to do the set menu, but the set menu evolves consistent all the time. So if you could be sitting on one table having some line caught bass, for example, on the other table they're having mackerel, because I've only got 2 bass and I've only got 4 or 5 mackerel. I haven't got enough to feed everybody because we're buying from day boats, right? So that's the sort of way the menu works. It's quite exciting from our point of view in the kitchen, because we just get to work with lots of different things, albeit we still got that one set menu. And because of the reputation that we built up over the years, we're very, very fortunate that people will come and sort of pass over their well-earned money for us to just cook for them. And that's, for me, you can put all your stars and rosettes and whatever's to the side, because the biggest accolade is having customers come to the restaurant and just sort of go, "We'll have whatever you're cooking, please, chef." So
I love that. It should be the dream scenario for both parties. And I love a restaurant where you just go in and say, right, send me whatever chef says is amazing today, and just to have that as a business model where everybody gets what they're given and everybody's grateful. It must be brilliant. Is it a set price? Did I read it's 80 quid or something like that?
Both restaurants ran. So the other thing that I was a bit uncomfortable with, we had the restaurant Nathan Outlaw, which was 2 stars, and we had the fish kitchen was a 1 star, and everyone sort of not looked down, but it never got any notice, the fish kitchen, even though it's an amazing restaurant in its own right. So I brought them back up together, so they both got the same price. So there's no difference. So I'm trying to, and then from my point of view, that works for the staff as well. So everyone feels that everyone's on the same level. No one's better than another. You're not working at the lesser restaurant because you're working at the fish, that sort of thing.
So you'd want to work at a shoddy 1 star place. Exactly. Well, I'm not going to make that sort of compromise. Yeah.
So I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen with all that sort of because obviously changing it, that we wouldn't even consider accolades and things like that. We're just doing it for the reasons that I just pointed out, just because we wanted to enjoy what we're doing and change the sort of path that we're going on. And so it was quite nice when the new road got 1 star, because it meant they're both the same. But so it worked well, but it wasn't really, it wasn't intentional. To be honest with you, I wasn't expecting anything, because we just, I didn't even inform Michelin or anyone that I was changing the restaurant. I just did it. For me, it didn't seem important to do that. It was more important that we just did it and made sure that everyone in the staff knew what was going on, and our loyal customers knew what was going on, really.
Yeah, amazing. Am I right in saying that Fish Kitchen's only 3 tables? Is that right? Or?
Well, yeah, it depends how the configurations are, yeah, but it's 3 or 4, depending on if it's 2s or 3s or 4s, whatever. Yeah, so it's only that used to have 6. It used to have 7 tables before lockdown, and now it can only have 3 tables because of the social distancing. It's so small. So
That's amazing.
it's
amazing
very
viable
small.
at that level, but
Yeah, it works because the actual staff ratio is so small. So you've got 2 chefs and 1 front of house running the service. So it's always been like that, and and it works like a well-oiled machine. It's really good. Yeah. So, and it's a very unique restaurant, Fish Kitchen, because it's sort of in an old fisherman's house, basically, right on the front down in Port Isaac, and it's the main. Yes, we're next to the R and Lie sort of place there, and it's just bang on the front there. So it's a great location, but it's the smallest. I think it must be one of the smallest restaurants going. It's so small.
Wow.
I can't stand up straight in there. I'm too tall. It's literally.
I'm envious of the simplicity of the model. Like you say, you've earned it, and you've got, because of the stars you've had and the reputation you've got in the food you do. But I said before we started this, now I've just come from my restaurant, which is sort of opposite end of the spectrum. It's nice food. It's certainly not Michelin, but it's it's right on the beach, and it's got like a 100-seat terrace on the beach, and then it's got a takeaway next door where we do these sort of wood-fired pizzas. It's got a container bar on the beach out the front on the deck, and then it's got a balcony, a mezzanine level, and it's just carnage. It's absolute chaos. And the thought of it just sounds amazing. Cut the floors, people get what they're given, and it's £80 a head. I'm like, I'm envious, Nathan, of the carnage that I'm about to go into. I might come for a job. Yeah. So that figure of £80, did you get the calculator out and go, okay, GP, staff percentage, what do I want to spend on food? What's the magic number? Or did you go £80's in a reasonable amount to spend, and let's hope it works out? How much formula was in there?
Well, it's sort of come from 2 areas. I mean, from Fish Kitchen, it sort of built up over the years. When Fish Kitchen first started 8 years ago, it was one simple menu of dishes individually priced, a bit like small plates, tapas style type restaurant. But over time, it grew over the 8 years to a point where people were just saying, well, they're literally coming in and saying, can we just have what you give us? So we got to a point where it's sort of 78% people were just going, can we have whatever, the set menu? So we just weren't selling like the plates. So when we decided to open up, we had to work out whether 3 tables was going to work for a start. So when we opened up, we thought the only way we're going to make 3 tables work is if we give a set menu and don't give any other option, because otherwise we can't. It just doesn't work. So so that's when we came up with, we're looking at the average spend for over the last 3 or 4 years, and we thought, that's a good price, and that's what people are usually sending. So it was very that simple, really. That's what we did. And then in regards to Outlaw's New Road and coming up with the same sort of same price, it was just sort of thinking to myself, well, we used to charge £140 for the same quantity of food, right? The quality is not different. The quality is still the same. We're still buying from the same fishermen, we're still buying from the same growers. And we just thought, well, the only difference being that we can see is that before you had the table for the whole lunchtime or the whole dinner time. Now we're asking you to stick around for a couple of hours, and then we need the table back, because that's how it's going to work for our business model, because of the social distancing, and we ain't got as many tables. So we got to do something. We got to do that. And we thought, well, is it fair that we can't? I don't want to charge £140 because we're not pretending to be a 2 Michelin star restaurant anymore. Like we are now. We're a different restaurant, and we're relaunching. So it sort of thought, well, let's do the same as the other restaurant and be fair. So if you want to eat with us in either of the restaurants, everything's at the same standard, same smiles are on the faces of all the staff, same quality of ingredients, it's the same price. That was it. It took about that bit of explaining. Then that's how long it took to make the decision as well.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, just like you say, gets simpler and simpler, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the things. Just take away as much. I mean, I've been doing it for so long now, 20 odd years or whatever. Just taking things that don't need to be there away just makes life so much easier for everybody and the customer. and that's really what we concentrate on, really.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are doing the same. We used to, have this obsession to, get as close to everything as we could. We had our own bit of land out in the forest where we grew our own produce. We looked at open our own microbrewery, roast on our own coffee, had our own in-house bakers, and then over the years, and particularly this year, we've gone, what are we doing? Let's just strip it all out. Somebody who wakes up every morning, and I've learned that doing this podcast. I speak to these crazy obsessives who just, are just focused on their niche, whatever their niche might be, whether it be olive oil or chocolate or some distilled product they do. But they wake up in the morning and they just obsess about that one thing. And you think, well, I can never compete with that. I can never compete with that as a restaurateur. We should just collaborate with all these amazing people, and do the end of the circle, I suppose. Is it mainly tourists that use you, or have you got a good local following as well?
No, I think because we've been around for so long, the local side of it is really strong, and we're really lucky. Cornwall is one of those sort of places where, especially where we are, North Coast, it's very lucky that it's an area that is busy all year round. Even though parts of Cornwall, say West and East Cornwall, they struggle a little bit out of season because it's a little bit more remote. But where North Cornwall is, especially with the sort of the overflow from, say, Newquay and Padstow and places like that, it continues to be quite busy. We're sort of like on the edge of it. But Port Isaac's just sort of like on the edge of that bubble of where it seems to remain busy. But I would say it's 50-50 split, really. In terms of, last year it was all British people, obviously, because there was no international people coming in because of the COVID. So we had a slightly different market last year, but that was fine because we changed the restaurant. So I think we would have maybe struggled a little bit with the prices that we were charging before last year, because before we used to get a lot of international travellers as well coming to restaurant Nathan Outlaw because of the reputation it had. But I've heard say that out of season we get a lot more locals because obviously they're busy when the tourists are around.
Yeah, they must love it. It's probably the only time they can get a table. Talking of which, so you're not open on, you don't have any outside space or very little. So you're basically waiting until the 17th of May, I guess it is. Is that right? And then how are bookings looking?
May and June. Well, we only release 90 days in advance. So in the bookings, because we found that there's a trend to eat with us. Say you're sitting there in July and you eat with us, then go online and book for next July, and you forgot you had that booking. So we had that sort of trend was happening quite a lot with us. So if we went too far with bookings in advance, you'd end up people not showing up. So we do the 90 days, and that's just purely so that we know that it's still in the people's minds that they're going to turn up, because we can't afford to lose tables with only so few tables.
Yeah, absolutely.
So but I think all of May's full, all of June's full, and then obviously we're into July releasing it, so I think it's looking very good for July. So if May and June are full, July, August, and September would be good, I think. So
do you literally release tables on a daily basis then, on a sort of rolling basis? Yeah. So it's a bit like Glastonbury, where people have to get up at I don't know what time are they released? Midnight.
Well, my general manager Ian was telling me yesterday that he's looking at the trends of when people book and what time they book online, and it's usually about 5 past midnight.
Really?
So, people must be just waiting for it to come up. So
and then literally by 10 past 12, that's it. They're gone. Yeah.
You know what? I'll never ever take that for granted, because I remember the days when there was no customers. So it's sort of, and that's etched into my mind. So while we're nice and busy and this is happening, I just sort of always remember what it was like back in the early days. So, but it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, when you say when there were no customers, was that with this restaurant, or was that the earlier incarnations?
I think the first restaurant I opened, the Black Pigment, was in 2003. I was only 24 at the time, 25, and that was actually in Rock, where which is opposite Padstow, and it was it's one of the places that's mental for 10 weeks of the year, because people are around from the schools and stuff like that, and then it used to just go dead. And it used to go when I had a restaurant there. That was the situation. It's changed now, and it's evolved, and it's busier all year round. But you'd have. I remember one November. I think the first year we were open, I think in 1 week we did 8 people. in
Wow.
1 week, and it was sort of like, that's harder. You people go, well, 8 people, that's easy, isn't it? But it's not. It's like it's worse than being fully booked, in my opinion, because you're still prepping all the fish, you're still prepping all the food, you're doing everything you need, and then there's no one come in, and it doesn't matter how much advertising you do, and you're just wasting your money because there's nobody there. And that's how it is one of those things where you've and I think having them sort of that maybe it was probably up to 5 or 6 years being like that, I suppose. I moved on a few places from there, but it was always the same scenario, and it just sort of, it keeps you grounded to make sure that you save your pennies in the winter time, and make sure you've got, when the money's coming in, you've got to put it into your winter savings pot to make sure the restaurant survives, and we still do that to this day.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, we're the same. I speak to people, peers with high street restaurants, and their revenue fluctuation, good month, bad month, might be something like 10%, maybe apart from Christmas, and ours is like 1,000%. We can literally take 300 or 400 quid on a Tuesday in February, or 25 grand on a Tuesday in August. In fact, it can be the same week, and just the weather. You get a busy day, and it's absolutely pumping, and then people will be like, "Oh my god, you must be a millionaire!" And the next day, all the stock's there, all the staff's there, all the bills are still there, but literally it's gale force winds, as is the case in this country, and it's dead. So it's a good experience to go through. I think that's why I'm so sort of like I said, envy's not the word, but impressed and understand, I guess, that amazing business model of just going, look, this is let's simplify it, this is the covers, this is the price. I really like it. One of the things, you've always been really positive about, loving what you do, loving the kitchen, loving cooking, but a lot of chefs really struggle with the challenge of all the hours. You talked then a little bit about the pressure of the early days, particularly when then they try and have sort of families and kids in the mix and get work-life balance. You seem to have done all right. You're married to Rachel, you've got a couple of teenage kids. How have you managed that challenge of being so driven, particularly when you're going off to Dubai and London in what's a really tough sector? And any tips to other chefs? You must have witnessed presumably a lot of people struggling with mental and physical health in the kitchen. So any advice that you give people?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, I'm very fortunate that my wife Rachel is from the hospitality industry as well, so she fully understands, and her family all were as well. And I do see my chefs and the guys that work with me that have got relationships with, say, people, their partners are not in the hospitality industry, and that is hard. There's no doubt about it. So especially if you want to work in a restaurant that's, say, that's higher end, and it is an ambition of yours to get, say, as far as you can. It takes a lot out of you. So I've just been lucky that my wife fully understands, and we've always had an understanding that if it got too much and she said to me, look, we need to change, I would change. And we've always had that understanding. But because I've always sort of been very driven in what I want to do, and we've seen the benefits over the years, like I suppose, especially more so in the last 5 years, I suppose, it's all been worth it in that sense. Albeit I don't have many memories of my kids being young, which is really sad. So my kids now, my son's 18, he's just about to go off to university in September, and my daughter's 16, she's just finishing school. And we've had, the last year has been great because we've had all this time together. So, and that's part of me feels like, but like they both fully understand that they've grown up knowing nothing different. So from that point of view, they're happy. They've sort of, they know Dad goes to work and he does what he does, and because this is the life we lead. So they've been very understanding. But I think in terms of the only advice I can give people is just, you've got to be understanding of the situation of your partner, and what they're in. Even though we're very driven, a lot of chefs and a lot of people in the industry are driven for their career and to make their business work. You can't do it on your own. You've got to do it. You've got to have that support. And if I hadn't have had the support, I don't know where I would have been. I certainly wouldn't be speaking to you now. That's for sure. So I think for the guys that work with us, and they all come and talk to me about stuff like that because, they know that I've gone through pretty much all of it, like especially with, even even get down to how to buy a house chef and all that sort of stuff. All them, everything. I'm like a social worker, I think, at times. So, but I like that role. I mean, that's the role that I've always, we've always kept an open book, and in family and within a business, and I think that's why. And I think that's the way to do it, to be honest with you. I mean, people, we all need to help each other. If everybody helps each other, it makes life a lot better for everyone.
Did Rachel ever have to press that emergency button and go, Nathan, quick, come home, it's
carnage? I think when they were toddlers, when the kids were toddlers, it was a bit full on, like, because it is, and we didn't have it. We were pretty skint, to be honest with you, when the kids were young. Rachel and I just decided to have children, when we were very young. She was 23 and I was 25 when Jacob was born, and and 2 years later Jessica come along, and I wasn't in a position, a high paid job, and do it. I mean, I had I suppose a young chef reputation of doing quite good, and so I was getting a few opportunities, but it wasn't, it was paying for the nappies, and it wasn't much more than that. So we only really bought our first house probably about 7 years ago, I suppose. And that was on one of them dodgy 110% mortgages. It was like when they existed and everyone got stung with them. So it's
Northern Rock.
It was. You're right.
There you go. I had one of those.
I didn't want to say it, but luckily for me,
I think they've gone under now. So been bought out.
So it was one of those dodgy mortgages. That was the only way we got off the ground, really. So I mean, now as I sit here, in terms of our business, Rachel and I own it all. We don't have any investors or backers.
Amazing.
And that's just really through perseverance. And that's one other bit of advice I give anybody that's sort of like wanting to have their own restaurant or wanting to, sort of a hotel or whatever, is it just takes time. And to be honest with you, and I always say that you've got to take risks, but you've got to be patient. And I think that, and them two things, and actually be prepared to muck up. Don't worry. Making a mistake isn't the end of the world. I mean, at any level, I reckon, I would say probably 90% of my knowledge is through mucking things up.
Yeah.
I honestly think that is.
Yeah. Learn fast, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you fund then? Because the Black Pig was young, 24. Was that? Did somebody put some money in to open that, or did you do that?
Yeah, that was a strange, not a strange situation. It was a situation that came up my indoors. My brother's, my wife's brother and his wife, the same age as us, and they wanted to do something. They wanted to come back to Cornwall and they wanted to do something. And Rachel was very pregnant with Jacob, and I was working in Newbury at the vineyard at Stock Cross with John Campbell at the time as head chef, and I just wasn't enjoying it. I was like 24 years old, 23, 24 years old, and I was head chef and in charge of like 20 odd people, and I just realised that I hadn't done enough cooking, and I knew that myself. I've always been very self-critical of myself, so I've always been able to, I still think I'm a commie now, you know what I mean? The way I go about my days, I don't think I know anything, I learn loads. So when I got offered, I sort of, to do something back in Cornwall, it was just sort of like, I just believed in myself that I could do it. It's completely the wrong decision unless you've got that mentality, because I wanted to make it work. So I went from earning, I think I was earning like 27 grand or something like that as a head chef back then, which is quite good money. You're talking in 2002, that wasn't bad money to go to earning, to then go into having no job, to open a little restaurant and then paying myself 13 grand a year, which was, we couldn't even afford that, to be honest with you, when we opened that restaurant. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea.
It's good. Yeah, it's a brave decision to do that. Not everybody has the confidence at that age, I suppose, isn't it? But I suppose, testament to the success that you've had on an ongoing basis. I guess there must have been something deep within you. You got a Michelin star, was it 12 months after opening or something ridiculous, of your first restaurant? I'm sure that did your confidence some good as well. So what were you doing that was special, and was that a surprise that it happened so quickly? And were you even aiming for it, I suppose?
Well, I wasn't aiming for it because I didn't even really know that we hadn't put out any feelers. We hadn't told anybody that we were opening like that. I mean, obviously, I was lucky enough to get a bit of press in the early days because I did a few competitions like the Roux Scholarship, Young Chef, Young Waiter, and the Academy of Culinary Arts, which was sort of like your junior chef sort of competitions when you're coming up through the industry. So I'd done them. So there was people that were aware of that we were opening a little restaurant, and because I worked with John Campbell, at the time he was getting a lot of press, and he was he went on to be a 2 Michelin Star chef as well. So it was there was a little bit of attention from from the industry press, not from main. No one else knew who bloody hell I was. They were like, "Who is this guy coming doing this?" But from that little attention, I think we've been open. We opened in the May because Jacob was born May the 6th, so we opened on the 20th of May. The Michelin Guide used to come out in January then. So that first January, we got the star. But I had no chat with an inspector or anything. I had no clue. It was back with the days they didn't do like these snazzy sort of press releases and stuff like they do now. These events, it was just like it was a fax that came through, like and it said who was the additions and who was the deletions. I think that's what it said. And and I got a phone call from some. I remember it. 'Cause it was some random bookshop owner. Rung the restaurant, and he must have got delivered to him. And I think they usually have embargoes on them, and you can't open them. But he must have opened it, and he just said that, "Oh, well done, you've got a Michelin Star." And I'm like, "Well, I can't believe this because obviously it's not official. It's not been. No one's told me, and I've not seen it from my own eyes. But holy moly!" Like, I was like, "It's pretty crazy." So it's and then So I was only 25 when we got that. And that made a bit of a difference from an industry point of view. People knew we were there, and it sort of set waves in the sort of, I suppose, the people, the food tourists I call them, the people that love to go around the country visiting all the new restaurants that are sort of up and coming. But I'm never gonna talk down upon all that sort of stuff because I think it sort of paved the way for where we are now. But in terms of I think you asked me what's the difference between what brought the attention in terms of the food, and there's no difference what we do now to what I did then. It's exactly the same in terms of the way I think about putting dishes on the plate. Buy the best ingredients and cook them as well as you can. And that's pretty much it. And season them, I suppose.
What happened to the Black Pigment? Why did that close?
Inexperienced restaurateurs that didn't know what we were doing, and fell out with family. That's the usual. What would happen in that situation, that you could see it coming. And me now as 43-year-old could see that situation happen in my life. But when you're 20, 25, you just think you can conquer the world, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, like you say, it's what we are all part of that learning through mistake kind of journey, I suppose.
Yeah, I still think because I was in the kitchen there, and it's just me and another chef. It was Pete. Pete was there for a bit. Chris was there for a bit, who's now a chef at Penson's restaurant. He was at Gidley Park, and then he was my head chef as well at the restaurant Nathan Outlaw. So he was there for a bit, and then we had a young lad who came out of Rick Stein's CV restaurant called Michael Hamilton, was my first chef who worked there with me, and he's now in New York with his own restaurant. So they've all gone and done really nice, done well for themselves, but we were just so inexperienced. We just, it was just the food that we were like, it was rough. It was like a rough diamond. The food was what saved us, because we were cooking nice food, but everything else around it was a bit of, I'd imagine, a bit of a joke. But,
is that predominantly the numbers? Is it the maths bit which was the challenging bit? Because that's, I suppose, fundamentally, although it's annoying in business, the numbers have to work, don't they?
I didn't even think about it. No. That's why.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest with you. I'm an honest person. It didn't. I sort of had a rough idea of working things out from being head chef at the Vineyard and at Lords of the Manor. I was a sous chef as well in the Cotswolds, and I sort of had an understanding, but I didn't understand it. All I was interested in was cooking food as good as I can to sort of like the standard of Thomas Keller and Marco Pierre White and Gordon Ramsay and all these people that were like amazing at that time, and just wanted to be as good as they were, and I didn't even consider that sort of stuff. And over time you just realise what's important, don't you? And you learn the hard way, because you realise you can't pay yourself this month.
Yeah, that is true. That's normally, So who taught you the most then? Where did you learn the most about the business element of restaurants?
I think I've learned it. To be honest with you, I learned the hard way. I've just learned it myself. I mean, I'm very lucky. I had a really good mentor for business, a guy called David Hunter, who's basically a hospitality specialist who's really, really good in terms of helping you run a business. And he helped me, I suppose, like a lot to understand how to run restaurants. And then it's just been really learning the hard way. I think the benefit of having a restaurant that's seasonal, if you call it a benefit, is you get downtime. And in that downtime, you get time to just reassess what you're doing. And I think that is where every year we've always had this sort of natural progress of like consolidation, looking at what we're doing, what we're going to do next season, things like that. And I think just by fine tuning it over years and years and years is what's given me that knowledge. And now I can read anything. You give me a budget, I can do all that sort of stuff. Not a problem. But in that when I was at the Black Pig, we survived purely off the reputation of the food and taking enough money through the till just to keep us going. But it was just we were so inexperienced and so sort of so young in what we were doing that I was lucky. We had customers that were very loyal actually for those few years that we were open, and it was just them contacts that saved us. And I went on to work at a place called St Irvin Manor, which was a little B&B that we got a Michelin Star in, and that was the same sort of setup, 2 in the kitchen, 5 or 6 tables, not too many tables, but got a good standard in there. They taught me a bit, and then I went on to work in Foy at a place called the Marina Hotel, which is now a house. It's not even a hotel anymore. That's where the restaurant Nathan Outlaw started for the first time. And I suppose that was a hotel, so we had to do everything: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I've literally done every form of catering, bar probably like army catering. Like everything else I've done. I started in contract catering with my dad.
Yeah. Buttering toast at the age of 8, I read, I think, didn't I? Is that right?
Yeah. I was in there with him at like 8, 9 years old on Saturday mornings, doing things like buttering toast and traying up sausages to go under the grill. And he worked in like a big sort of paper mill sort of factory canteen, and sort of they were doing a lot of people, 200-300 people like for lunch and breakfast and stuff, and they were doing like special events in the evening. So I used to get involved in that with him. So that was just good fun. I just loved the camaraderie of like the team. They were just basically pirates. So it was so funny.
with a dad as a chef, because he was a chef for 50 years, I think, wasn't he? Did he knew how hard it was as an industry, presumably. Did he share your love? Did he ever try and talk you out of it and go, man, there's got to be easier ways of making a living, son? Do something else, or was he always encouraging and saying, yeah, go for it?
No, 100%. The first summer when I was 15, when I did work experience with him, he tried his utmost to put me off. Like he did everything in his power to make my life a misery. So I was doing all the crappiest jobs. I was doing washing up all the time. Anytime I got close to a job that was fun, he'd tell me to do something else, and he was just trying to make me not be a chef. Wow. But then once I got through that sort of, I suppose, his initiation process of like, he saw that I wanted to do it and wanted to cook, he then encouraged me 100% from that point on. So
he was ultimately secretly pleased in the end.
Yeah, but initially though, he told me recently. He said, I didn't want you to do it."
Well, no, I'm not surprised. Yeah, I think I'd be the same with my family. I think if they, although my sons, my son and daughter probably think I'm so uncool, they can't think of anything worse than doing what their dad does for a living. So I don't think I'm in danger of it at the moment. But if that changes, you'd see. You mentioned sustainability earlier, so I just want to touch on that because you're very well known for caring about the environment. Obviously, you're very well known for fish. So how do you manage buying sustainably? How do you define sustainably, in the fish world? Is it relying on sort of good partnership with local fishermen? Just talk to me a little bit about how you do that.
Well, I mean, I think we're very, very lucky where we are from a location point of view. So it's all very transparent. So we can sort of always ask the questions. We can see with our own 2 eyes exactly where it's coming from, who's caught it, and all that sort of stuff. So that's one thing that helps us be as sustainable as we can be. Even if that is a thing, I'm not sure. It's one of those things. I think it's buying responsibly is more important. So, I mean, I think over the years things have got better in terms of like the awareness of what's going on with fishing. I think fishermen. There's some really good young fishermen that are very responsible fishermen that are really trying to make a difference and are thinking about the future. And so it's supporting them guys, making sure that they get the support and the recognition that they need to make it viable for a business to support their families. And really, it's championing. I can't say that word, but looking after the species that people don't hear of much, and trying to promote those species and sort of using them. So I mean, over the years, I've seen, if I couldn't put mackerel on and sell it when I first opened my restaurant, people would just not eat it. But now it's one of the most popular fish on the menu if you put it on. So that's just a good example. I always remember, I'm not going to name who the chef was, but someone once said to me that mackerel should never be on a restaurant menu. It's not good enough. So that's the turnaround in my time of being a chef. So now you see it and it sells really, really well. But I think it's educating yourself as well with things like ethical side of things, and environmental stuff is being aware and helping out. So we sort of promote a charity called Surfers Against Sewage, which they are very big on plastic pollution and supporting that and making sure that people are doing beach cleans and stuff like that. We also look at people at Fisherman's Mission, which are a charity that help people with bereaved families or injuries or loss of earnings or whatever within the fishing industry, which they get no help from the government. And I think they're the only it's the only charity that supports the fishing industry in that way. So I think it's just being part of the community as well, and keeping your eyes and ears open to what's going on, and making sure that you know what you're talking about, I suppose.
Yeah,
Sometimes
it's challenging, I think, with fish, and because animals, they kind of they stay in the field that they're supposed to stay in, and you can follow their whole journey. But fish is difficult because they move around the world and they're pregnant at different times, and then obviously the size that you can catch them, it's easy in a field because you can sort of see them grow, I suppose. Do you get to chat to the fishermen and sort of understand if there is a genuine change? And I'm thinking sort of Cornish fishing villages have been making a living this way for hundreds of years. Do they chat about whether fish stocks, are recovering or the situation's getting worse, or do you get to have those conversations?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on which species it is, because there's certain species that you hear things from fishermen that say that are not as many around. But it's not necessarily from overfishing. It could just be the change in the climate and stuff as well when they move on to different waters. There's so many. I think it's such a minefield as a subject. So that's why when people say to me, do you buy sustainably? Are you ethical with the way you buy your fish? I say, well, we are, because we know where it comes from. We know who's caught it. We know how they've caught it. Also, we're a very small restaurant. So therefore, we're not a big chain restaurant. We're not serving lots and lots of fish to lots and lots of people. We're taking the best seafood from the fishermen that we know, who we know that are catching in a sustainable manner, as sustainable as they can. So I mean that's all we at this stage. It's a bit like when you're supporting recycling systems, right? You can only do as much as you can. You can put the pressure on. You can do all these systems, but if the support's not there as a restaurateur or as a chef to enable you to be the best you want to be, then you've just got to be patient and wait for them things, because all these things will come about. They will get better at doing all these things because they have to, because it's about saving the planet, isn't it? So in terms of the fish, we do everything we can that's in front of us to ensure that we are doing the best job at buying that we can. It's very, very difficult for restaurants that are in cities, or it's very difficult for a consumer at home to be able to buy the sustainable quality fish that we buy, because they're just not in that situation. So I think, in terms of should we be eating as much fish? Probably not. In terms of the certain species that get highlighted for being overfished, but I mean, it's certainly not an industry that we should just be turning our backs on, because we've got to feed we've got to feed the world, haven't we? So there's very clever people out there. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's very, very, very clever people, whether that's fishermen, whether that's people working in agriculture, will discover and create very special and very clever ways of making sure that the stocks are there in the future. And I've got to believe that, and I want to believe that, because I think it's all doom. It's a lot of doom and gloom about it, but they only look at the bad things. Everyone seems to, in the news, they highlight the bad stuff. There's a lot of good people doing good stuff out there as well. So it's a shame they don't get highlighted more.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think, and it's funny enough, this week's podcast that went out, a chap called Phil Horton from Better Food, who really understands, the food system, and he's got organic shops dotted around Bristol. And we were chatting last week about his decision to carry on selling meat, and he sells himself as very ethical, sustainable, and he gets a bit of grief for even selling meat, but he made some really good points and understood it in a way that most people slinging mud probably wouldn't. And some of it was around sort of carbonization of soil, and actually you need we're an island covered in grasslands, and that grassland's full of carbon, and actually digging it all up and just planting plants maybe wasn't actually as environmentally friendly as using animals on the land and getting the animals to eat the grass, which turns it into something that humans can consume. However, he was in no way defending the sort of industrialization of mass produced, cut down the Amazon and grow cattle that way. And I think it's the same with you with fish, isn't it? You're not saying, let's go out and pillage the oceans with jumbo jet kind of size nets and be out for days at sea. It's kind of like, look, if you can humanize food again, if you can catch from local fishermen who serve the local village, it isn't actually about feeding the world on that level. It's kind of like, can we feed the village? And if more farms and more fishermen went, look, can I just serve my local market, instead of thinking, right, I need to fish on a scale that's going to basically flood the international fish markets, then we'd be in a better place. But I agree with you, it's a minefield and it's complicated, but let's hope some people with big brains get it sorted.
Yeah, definitely.
So is it true that you've got almost 1,000 cookbooks, Nathan?
Probably more than that.
Where the hell do you put them?
At the moment, they're all in storage because we're moving soon. But they are. It's just I've just been collecting them over the years, really, and they just build up and build up. And my wife hates them. She's like,
wow. Your removal company must cry when they rock up. My wife's a primary school teacher, and she's got shitloads of kids' books. and every time we move house, luckily, I think we've found somewhere now we'll stay. But we were renting for about 15 years, and we'd end up moving about 18. And every 18 months, I'd be like, oh my god, how many all those Amazon boxes we get delivered every day over the course of the last 18 months. Here they all are. Not only have I paid for them to be delivered, I'm now paying this poor man breaking his back to move them. But that's an impressive collection. So you're gonna build a library in the new house?
I'd like to. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it'd be nice to have them. We did think about putting them at like somewhere at the restaurant, but there's nowhere for them. But it's just something. I mean, I don't have any hobbies really other than cooking, and so that's really what I buy. So I'm lucky enough. I do get sent them as well nicely from some people. Like they do send me a book because they know I collect them and I appreciate them, I suppose. Maybe. And obviously I've written 5 books myself as well, which is sort of so I think it's always part of that sort of respect for the authors and the respect for publishing houses as well, and the hard work that they do to produce them. I think they're all pieces of art, really.
Yeah. No, my wife's the same, to be fair. She's got, as well as the kids' books, she's got loads and loads of recipe books. She absolutely loves them. So, 5's good going. You got any more coming out? When was the last one released?
Well, the last one came out actually in 2019. That was the Restaurant Nathan Outlaw book. So I suppose that was a good natural end because that was it was an overview of 12 months of the restaurant and the seasons and what we go through and thinking a few stories about our suppliers and stuff. It was a nice book, and I suppose it's sort of like a piece of history now because that restaurant doesn't exist anymore. So.
That's a good excuse to write a new one, Nathan.
Yeah, in the future, I just think that them sort of things. It's just you can end up churning them out, I suppose, and I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that what you actually write it's got some sort of some depth, I suppose, and to it. So but I've got a few ideas. I've got a couple of ideas that I'm talking to a publisher about at the moment, but we're nothing concrete as yet. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, look, we're running out of time, so let's just flip to the future a little bit. Obviously, incredibly tough time for the industry. You've been through the mill yourself. What's your thoughts on sort of the wider impact of COVID, I suppose, on the sector? Who do you think is going to come out the other side of this strong? Do you think it's the independents that are going to do all right and people are going to support the little guys, or do you think actually it's the big players with sort of shareholders and big budgets that are going to come out stronger? Any thoughts on that?
My gut feeling is that the independents are going to do better. And the only reason why I say that is I think you've got control when you're independent to diversify and change like I have with what you do. And I think that is the most important thing, is that you do, if you need to change, have the confidence to change. Because it's the difference of saving your business and not. I think with the big corporate business and with my experience of having corporate is the problem with the big corporates, talking about the big hotel chains, is that they don't think about the people too much. I think they think about the money, and the money ain't coming. Especially if you're in England and you rely on international travellers in a big hotel, I think you're in a bit of bother. So, I mean, that's going to be a tough one for them, albeit, and I think if anybody's backed with big finance, especially from like any banks or the city, they're going to be maybe a little bit in trouble as well because of because they want their money back, don't they? Let's face it. You've got the truth. So I think the way forward in terms of restaurants and hotels and stuff like that is to be yourself and be independent and do the fundamentals of hospitality. Look after people, look after everybody, and then people will come to your restaurant or your hotel or whatever sector you're in within the industry. And I think people will come out of this appreciating going out more. I think they'll appreciate good things. I think they'll appreciate people that are doing a good job. I think there'll hopefully be less people that are just glaze over hospitality and use us as like with the dirt on their shoe, which sometimes happens. Because I just think it's been so publicised that the hospitality industry has been at a tough time, So I think that should highlight that, and I think the future of dining out is just going to be a simpler one. I think people are going to enjoy the things. They're always going to want something special. You're always going to have that special occasion. But I think more than not, I think people have had a tough time generally, everybody, and I think people just want to get back to enjoying themselves. So I think it's the hospitality industry. I think you got to have faith in it, and I think it will sort of bounce back, and it'll bounce back stronger.
Do you think in some ways there was a necessary correction because there was this sort of oversupply of venture capitalist backed sort of, same stuff on every street corner in Britain? Was that causing you concern as somebody who works in hospitality and sort of, loves the sort of maybe the quirkier independent side? Or
Yeah, it definitely dilutes the industry and takes away some individuality and talented people. I think people may work in those, like you say, them restaurants or them places that you described then, and end up losing their love of the industry through the way that they're run. So hopefully, once the tough times are over, there'll be some really interesting new up and coming places that come out of this. And one thing is, if you are a person that's got hospitality in your blood, you're always going to work your arse off, aren't you? And I think that's the thing. I think if you're prepared to work, you'll get yourself back on your feet and you'll get back into it. And people, I don't, when I employ people, I don't care where they've worked or what they've done. I just look for their attitude and the way they are, and I think that says a lot. So, and most people that are good in hospitality are like that. So.
Yeah, no, it's true. A lot of people I've spoken to have ended up launching these sort of food boxes, I suppose, as a way of navigating through. But a lot of them are saying actually it's been pretty decent and they're going to keep doing it. Did you look at doing stuff like that? I suppose, yeah. Were you tempted to try and do any of that home delivery aspect?
Well, we did the first lockdown. We did takeaways, which were just pick up. We haven't done any of the boxes, and the reason why we haven't done the boxes is just purely because I don't think it's the direction of what we do. I don't think we could do it and tick the expectation that customers would expect when they open the box. I've had some really good ones, actually. I bought some really good ones from places. I had one from Rockfish, which Mitch Tonk's one that was really good. Yeah. And I've had a few other ones as well. I had a really good one from Vivek Singh in the Cinnamon Club. That was really good. And so I think I think in these cities, restaurants that have got the pressure of paying their rents and got pressure of they need that cash flow. I think they will probably need to continue doing stuff like that, because I think cities are still going to it's going to be a while before them places are full like they used to be full. I don't think that's going to take a while, especially with all the restrictions and the madness of these vaccine passports and things like that that are being talked about in the news. I think that's just going to put people off. So I think everybody that started these boxes has got to persevere with them, because I think we don't know what the future holds. So it's worth continuing to do it, because otherwise, because that might be part of the future. So, but I think from our point of view, logistically, we would have to buy a new a new premises to start doing that from. I mean, I've got friends that work for Rick Stein. I used to work for Rick, and I know that they're doing loads of boxes. I was talking to Jack Steiner. He's been they're doing a lot of boxes, but they've got a unit. They've got that logistical side of it all sorted. We tried to do a takeaway from a restaurant kitchen. It's a nightmare.
It's so hard.
So we were doing like 4 orders every 15 minutes, and even that, it was fine if it was all 2 ordering, but then you get like a holiday home of like 10 people and they order like loads, and we got this little small basket fryer and we got this grill with small trays. We haven't got any of the equipment. Like, everyone's running around like craziness trying to get these takeaway out. So I think if we did anything like that, and we have to diversify because we're forced into doing that, we'd have to buy another premises.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We did some Valentine's boxes, and it was good fun, and it gave the team something to do, and it was a good team building thing. But we only sold 108, and I got in touch with Will Beckett at Hawksmoor because I know he's pumping out loads of these as well. And I said, "How the bloody hell are you doing it?" And I sent him a photo. We basically covered our entire deck terrace in little ramekins of this little sauce and these little packets we'd all sealed and some spices. It was utter carnage. And then the time it took to deliver, we delivered them ourselves because we thought, how hard can it be? 108 people. It took like 10 hours in 3 cars to deliver them. And we certainly didn't do it for Mother's Day, which was the original plan. We were like, we might just wait and focus on what we're good at, which is people come to us and eat rather than we come and rock up at their house. So look, it sounds like you've got really sort of nice plans to focus in where you are, focus on the 2 restaurants. Is there anything else on the horizon, or is literally as Rachel said, look, just chill out, Nathan, and let's just recover? What's your sort of trajectory, I suppose, for the next 12-18 months?
I suppose this summer is definitely about just getting everybody back up to speed, getting the team back together, bringing the love into that, making sure that the customers are getting looked after and looking after them 2 restaurants. And then we've got some property that we'd like to do some rooms, which is one thing. We haven't got any rooms, so that's one thing that we know that we've never done before that we might look into. But in terms of restaurants and extra restaurants and doing anything else, I've done that. I've been there, done that, and I think if I ever did anything else, it would just be to support somebody who worked with me for years and they want to do something, and I might just sit in the background and help them. But me with my name above a door, no thanks. I'm done with that.
Amazing. Well, look, hats off to you. I fully respect that, because people always ask, don't they? I get asked, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? And you're like, I'm going to have a rest. I'm just gonna, relatively, I'm still going to try and serve a few thousand people a year. But God, what a crazy time it's been. But hopefully that's the positive that comes off the back of this roller coaster that we've been on. So, well, look, thank you. Congrats on all you've achieved. It's lovely to get the chance to chat to you. But nice one for your hospitality adventure. If people want to follow you, Nathan, are you active on any particular sort of social media channels? Where's the best place for people?
Just on Instagram myself, and then I think the restaurants are on Facebook and stuff. But I don't get involved in that.
You don't need to. You're booked 91 days in advance.
Exactly. I'm just on the Instagram because I think it's quite fun, and I like it's some good stuff on there, and it's pretty light-hearted. I sort of avoid any confrontation on it, so it's keep it good like that.
Amazing. Well, look, I'll find the links and I'll pop them up on the show notes of this episode. I was going to say I'll come down and have lunch at your place, but you're fully booked. So come to me. I'll have definitely have space, Nathan. Anytime you're in Bournemouth, I'll shout you a beer overlooking the sea, and we'll have a chat. But thanks for spending the time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, cheers.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed hearing about Nathan's journey. It's clear that Nathan has learnt a great deal, not just about the cooking side of hospitality, but ever increasingly about the business, financial and people aspect of restaurants. I really look forward to getting down to Port Isaac for an icy cold beer with Nathan at some point over the summer. And remember, if you enjoyed the show, please do leave a review. It helps the algorithms keep this show in the podcast charts, which helps me attract awesome guests for us all to enjoy. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time when we are chatting to Adam Phelps from Cellar Society, talking all about the events industry. Until then, enjoy the sunshine. Cheers.